We're going to talk more about this with senior reporter Clovis Casali, who joins me on the set. Clovis, you were in Greenland last year as these first reports of these threats from Donald Trump to try and take it over. And as we just saw in the report, the White House is still not ruling out military intervention.
And Donald Trump has made it very clear that he wants the US to take over Greenland one way or another. So there are different options on the table. An invasion? It seems pretty unlikely because the US already have a military base in Pituffik. We're going to see on the map Greenland. Pituffik is around here in the north. But the problem is that since 1951, a defense agreement between the US and Denmark and Greenland, and it means already the closest of cooperations. That's why many don't understand why Donald Trump is threatening to invade a place he already has in many ways. If he wants to send more troops, he might just need to ask, and Denmark would probably agree. Then there's the idea that he could decide to, or at least try, to buy Greenland. There was the idea waved about in recent months that he would try to push for a referendum, give cash to Greenlanders, and therefore try to win that referendum for Greenland to join the US. All of those pretty unlikely also. There's also another scenario. An unnamed US senior official has told Reuters that there could be a forming of a compact of free association with the territory. That's basically a treaty of association, such as the one you have between the US and the Marshall Islands. What does it mean? It means the citizens from those two places can move to the other place, live freely without a visa, work there, travel there. But Denmark and Greenland have said repeatedly they're not for sale. They want the situation to stay the way it is. And that hasn't prevented Donald Trump from stating a few days ago that in 20 days or so, he will unveil his plans for Greenland.
In the meantime, discussions, possibly even negotiations, are set to be underway or perhaps happening at the moment.
Denmark has called for a meeting with US counterparts, foreign ministers, for instance. No answer yet, it seems. Greenland's Prime Minister has demanded respectful dialogue with the US and also called Donald Trump to stop with his fantasies of takeover. Believe me, for having been to Greenland last year, very few people actually want to join the US, and that's important to say. If Donald Trump decided to invade Greenland, not many Greenlanders would be happy to join the US. Last night, the Danish Prime Minister, who was in Paris for the meeting of the coalition of the willing for support for Ukraine, while Denmark's Prime Minister spoke to journalists from her country in the evening. Let's take a listen to what she says, because she talks about the prospect, the risk, and how she believes Donald Trump's threats need to be taken extremely seriously.
This is a serious situation. We cannot be sure that we will change the American position. And at that point, we will have to stand up for our own. It certainly helps to highlight that not only do you have a conflict with the realm, with the Kingdom of Denmark, but you have it in Europe, and that should count. I assume that my colleague assumes that, of course, it counts. Europe and the United States have been each other's closest allies since the end of the Second World War. And the reason why our people have lived in peace and freedom has been because we have worked together, not the opposite.
That interview with the Danish Prime Minister filmed last night here in Paris, just after that coalition of the willing for Ukraine. Now, you were at the press conference where questions were put to Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff. What did he have to say?
Of course, because everybody wanted to ask questions to Steve Witkoff about Greenland, about Donald Trump's words, threats. And there was clearly an uncomfortable situation there for the Europeans because on the one hand, they were trying to get more support, more commitment from the US to support Ukraine and the coalition of the willing. And at the same time, they didn't want to talk about Greenland because it would create problems with the US. Steve Witkoff, for instance, who you can see here, special envoy of Donald Trump for peace missions. Well, Steve Witkoff did not answer any questions really about Greenland, but he did, however, say that the US would always come in support of fellow NATO members who would come under attack. What happens, and Greenland is a fellow NATO member, Denmark also. So what happens if the US attacks a fellow member of NATO? Bit of a complicated situation. This morning, French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said that he spoke to Marco Rubio his counterpart in the US, the Secretary of State, who told him there were no plans in Washington to commit in Greenland what they did in Venezuela, capturing, of course, Nicolas Maduro. But Jean-Noël Barrot, the French foreign minister, also stressing in the United States there is massive support for the country belonging to NATO, a membership that from one day to the next would be compromised by any form of aggressiveness towards another member of NATO. And that points to the statement released by EU leaders yesterday, saying, not antagonizing or criticizing the US, but basically saying it's a collective security effort. It needs to involve the US and Europe to protect the Arctic island of Greenland for the sake of international security. And one last word, with the takeover of Greenland, the Danes, Denmark, saying that if the US took over Greenland, it would simply mean the end of NATO.